Do you want to
Okay,
speak?
yeah, okay. I don't see if people are connected, so welcome everyone to our webinar series on goose biology and ecosystem essential ocean variables. Today we will be learning about the ocean sound and the fish abundance and distribution essential ocean variables. And this time, this series is supported by the Global Ocean Observing System GOOS of the IOC UNESCO and the European Union project BioEcoOcean in collaboration with the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network MBON and the Air Center through its Networking Fridays. Next, please. So my name is Audrey Darnaud. I'm a marine ecologist based in Montpellier in the south of France, where I work for the French CNRS in a laboratory called Marbec. But I'm also the co-chair of the GOOS BioEco panel, and so today I will be your moderator for this webinar. Our speakers today are the two co-leaders of the Fish Abundance and Distribution EOV, starting with Dr. Suzanne Tanner from the University of Lisbon and the Marine and Environmental Science Center in Portugal. So Suzanne is a marine ecologist with expertise in the ecology, connectivity, and life history of marine estuarine fishes. Research integrates biogeochemical, ecological, and oceanographic approaches to understand fish population dynamics. Oh, can you go back? Yeah. Okay. So yes, she's trying to understand fish population dynamics, growth variability, and responses to environmental change. And she has contributed to international initiatives on marine connectivity and biodiversity monitoring, aiming to support ecosystem-based approach to marine resources management and conservation planning. We also have Dr. Anthony Bernard from the South African Institute of Aquatic Biodiversity in Grahamstown in South Africa, whose research focuses on understanding the ecology of subtidal reef and benthic ecosystems, their ability to support provisioning services like fisheries, and the effect of disturbances and climate change on ecosystem structure and health. So for this, he investigates the role of marine protected area in biodiversity conservation and resource management, and uses them at experimental controls to measure the effect of disturbances. And his work also involves methodological improvements and the development of sampling methods to best survey fish and invertebrate population associated with reef and benthic habitats from the shallow subtidal down to into the deep sea. And last but not least, we also have with us today the Ocean Sound EOV co-leader, Dr. Lucille Chapuis, based at La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia, who specialize in aquatic bioacoustics, focusing on soundscapes, acoustic ecology, and the impact of noise pollution on aquatic fauna. Her works integrates innovative technological approaches like 3D bioimaging, modeling, and AI with ecological insight to explore the effects of anthropogenic noise on marine ecosystems and develop strategies that mitigate the impacts of noise pollution. And she's also the chair of the International Quiet Ocean Experiment Task Team, which aims to develop a low-cost and user-friendly hydrophone to increase acoustic observation of the global ocean, particularly in low-income countries. Unfortunately, our co-leader, Dr. Peter Trajek, is unable to attend today because of the time at his location. So it'll just be the three of them, but that's really, really cool. Next, please. Okay, so all three speakers are going to present you their EOVs in a moment, but before we move to this presentation, I will give you a little introduction to the GOOS Essential Ocean Variable Framework and the BioEco Essential Ocean Variables. Next, please. So, as you know, understanding changes in the ocean is key to plan how to make positive changes at global, regional, national, and local levels, be it for climate action, blue economy development, ocean health conservation and carbon strategies, community adaptation, or weather forecast and early warnings. Yet the ocean is so vast, no one country can observe it effectively on its own. And moreover, all its parts are interconnected by currents, gravity, or just the movement of species. So local action have cascading impacts at all scales through changes in both ocean physics and biodiversity, leading to changes in ocean services. And that is why a global coordinated framework for integrated ocean observation and data sharing is crucial for the safety, well-being, and prosperity of all countries. Next, please. So what happens is that the many countries in the world have diverse needs for ocean information and also different capacity to collect and share data. And because of this, we currently have a fragmented approach for collecting observations, particularly on ocean biology and ecosystem. We follow diverse standards for data and metadata. And the level of sharing for ocean biodiversity data is particularly limited. And all this creates difficulty in harmonizing and comparing data from different regions, and also insufficient information to assess the status and health of the ocean biodiversity. But it also results in unequal access to ocean monitoring capacity, capability, and information. Next, please. So to address this, the mission of the Global Ocean Observing System, so GOOS, led by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, is to lead and support ocean observing programs, government, UN agency, research organizations, and even individual scientists all around the planet to help them better answer societal needs at all scales. By improving and facilitating the collection, the interoperability, the gathering, and the integration and sharing of key ocean data worldwide. Next, please. So the GOOS Essential Ocean Variable Framework has been developed in this context to address data fragmentation and coordinate how we collect ocean observation in a standardized way, with the aim to make it easier to measure and compare data worldwide. And so EOVs are the minimum set of ocean variables that we identify as needed to assess ocean state and the variability of important global ocean phenomena, but also to provide essential information for applications that support societal benefits. As you can see on the screen, they focus on three main delivery areas: climate, operational services, and ocean health. And they are grouped by discipline, each overseen by a GOOS expert panel. So you have physics and climate, geochemistry, and biology and ecosystem. And they each gather three key elements: the basic measurement for estimating the EOV itself, additional measurements that offer context around it, and a list of outputs that are calculated from the two former elements. Next, please. And so for the biology and ecosystem part, a total of 12 EOVs have been identified as the minimum set of ocean variables to help understand and forecast marine life. As you can see, because you have the list here, they focus on either essential marine taxa, like fish, or on key marine habitats, like coral reefs. And there is also two cross-disciplinary EOVs, which include ocean sound, which is cross-disciplinary between GOOS BioEco and physics panels. And so together, these 14 EOVs provide a framework for the coordinated and standardized observation of marine biodiversity in order to maximize the accessibility, interoperability, and usefulness of data worldwide. Next, please. So to finish, I wanted to highlight that in practice, the development, improvement, and application of the BioEco EOV's framework, from observation to data delivery, observation being in the bottom and data delivery being on the top of the slide. It's a collective work that is undertaken by several partners with complementary expertise. And what happens is that in order to best match the diverse requirement for marine biodiversity information at all scales from national to global, the GOOS BioEco panel on the bottom works in close collaboration with the Marine Biodiversity Observing Network MBON of GeoBon, which is in charge of global biodiversity data collection, to coordinate and guide the observation for all BioEco EOVs worldwide. And together, we ensure that the collected data are standardized and interoperable so that they can be compared and integrated across regions and globally to assess both the ocean health and the state of biodiversity. And then two other partners under the IOC, OBIS and ODIS, make sure that this data is largely collected, visible and accessible in a format that allows to derive fit for purpose indicators or data products from them. And for example, for these projects, you have the GeoBon Essential Biodiversity Variables, or EBVs, that are used in big international reports like those of IPBES and GBF. And so all this is what ensures that the data collected under the BioEco EOV's framework meet global information needs for informed decision-making at all scales, from local to global, to help matching intergovernmental goals for healthy, resilient, and sustainable ocean and planet. Okay, next, please. Okay, so after this background introduction, we are going to dig a little deeper into the ocean sound and the fish EOVs, and then we will have some time for questions, which you can add from now in the question and answer box or in the chat. So please don't hesitate to add your questions, and I will try to read them at the end. So they're going to speak, and then we do the question grouped at the end. So Lucille, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. So I'll introduce you to the ocean sound, essential ocean variable, and I will explain why sound is actually a very powerful integrative measure of ocean health, and how we built a specification sheet and an implementation plan to guide a coordinated global observing system. Next, please. So ocean sound sits at the intersection of several questions and tells us about three major dimensions of ocean change. The first one is the biodiversity. So many marine animals, from whales to fish to invertebrates, use sound to communicate. So soundscapes can be used to monitor species presence and ecological processes. Secondly, human-made noise like shipping, construction, and other human activities contribute to increasing amounts of underwater noise, now recognized globally as a pollutant. And finally, climate and environmental change. Sound can reveal physical processes related to wind, rain, sea ice, and even iceberg carving. So the Ocean Sound EOV gives us a unified framework to capture these signals consistently across the globe. Next, please. So as introduced by Audrey, BioEco EOVs can be divided into functional groups and habitats. But there are two cross-disciplinary EOVs, and Ocean Sound is, with Ocean Color, a cross-panel EOV. That means it stands both in the BioEco panel and the Physics and Climate panel. And we'll see why now. Next, please. So the fact that we use ocean sound to listen to biological organisms and ecosystems is pretty straightforward. However, what about measuring some aspects of the physical environment through sound? Well, sound is actually a physical variable itself. It's a mechanical disturbance in the medium, which can offer unique measurements of other physical processes, like the wind, for example, or the state of the sea. So on this plot, you see the spectrum of the underwater sound recording of the wind and the sea state. And you can see that the sound is higher, it's more intense for higher wind speeds and higher sea state. So we can correlate these types of variables together. Next, please. So therefore, it's not only useful to measure the biological activities, but also important physical variables that are very important for climate monitoring, like the extent of sea ice, for example, of the iceberg calving flux. Next. So to make sound truly useful at a global scale, we need coordination. And that means that we need to define these key variables that we need to measure. We need standardized protocols, a shared data system, so that we get, at the end, comparable products across platforms and regions. And so the Ocean Sound EOV aims to provide that structure so that the data collected in different seas with different technologies can be integrated into regional and global assessments. Next, please. So this is a map of the Ocean Sound EOV, which we are not going to go through in details today, but I would like to point your attention to the highlighted zone on the right, which shows the GOOS primary goals, and how some of the goals can be achieved by measuring ocean sound. So we talked about that before, climate change monitoring, by monitoring the wind, the waves, the rain, and the sea ice. Ocean health by recording marine ecosystems, loss of biodiversity, impacts of noise on wildlife and distribution of species, and finally monitoring some threats like earthquakes and tsunamis, naval activities and nuclear explosions. Next, please. So to implement ocean sound into GOOS, we have to consider the space and time scale of each of these questions. So for example, monitoring threats with sounds is on the small time scale because we are looking for incidents of specific sounds with most of the time a sudden onset and an end. But for climate change or ocean health processes, the time scale is much wider. And these temporal and spatial scales also change depending on the deployment modes. So for example, if it's hydrophone mounted or on an animal, or if it's a cable hydrophone from the shore. Next, please. So the first version of the implementation plan for this EOV was published in 2023 and is available online. So it's a document that is a comprehensive baseline documenting how sound observations are typically collected, analyzed, and reported. But it is quite a heavy document. So next, please. There is a shorter, more handy version of this for each EOV, and these are the specification sheets. So these are the core documents of the EOV. And it's designed along the ocean observing value chain, with each section tailored to different audiences. You can see there in the pink boxes. So it's the purpose of the spec sheet is to provide detailed information about the EOV variable, explain its importance, and offer guidance on how best to measure it and how to manage and contribute the data. Next, please. So this is a snapshot of the first version of the ocean sound specification sheet, which is now available online on the GOOS website. So we'll dig a bit more deeply into this and look at what we're measuring exactly. Next, please. So the ocean sound EOV focuses on two main measured variables, so two key measurements. The first one is sound pressure, and that is the bare minimum for any sound observation. And the second one is particle motion. So that's the displacement, velocity, or acceleration of the particle of the medium that can be measured while the sound pressure wave travels through the water. And the particle motion is critical for fish and invertebrates hearing, but historically undermeasured. So including particle motion is a major advance, ensuring that the EOV reflects the sensory ecology of the majority of marine animals. Next, please. So to interpret sound, we also need context. And these are the supporting variables that we can measure at the same time as doing our recordings. So the first one are environmental data, like the state of the sea, the sea ice, the temperature of the water, salinity, bathymetry, and sediment types, which are going to change the way the sound travels underwater. And then we've got EOV-related supporting variables, which are like the information about the sources and the receivers, for example, the sensitivity of the hydrophone you're using for these recordings. So these supporting measurements reduce the uncertainty and enable us to relate changes in sound to ecological or physical drivers, really. Next. So the specification sheet then provides example of processes, events, or properties to observe with the EOV based on these societal and scientific drivers that already talked about. So with the ocean sound EOV, we divided these examples into 4 major acoustic phenomena. The first one is acoustic events, such as an earthquake or an animal call, ice calving, boat noise, rain, wind events, storm events. Then we've got the ambient sound or the soundscape, as we call it now. So this is more to observe cyclical and temporal patterns of ambient sound and soundscape analysis. Then we've got the detection of sound producing animals. So that's to estimate their abundance, their distributions, and their migrations. And finally, we added acoustic indices, which summarize soundscape patterns in ways that can be compared across time and space. These indices are basically mathematical formulae intending to simplify the complexity of this data, the soundscape. I'll just note that the use of acoustic indices in underwater ecosystems is still debated and debatable due to some unique challenges and complexities of underwater soundscapes, which differ significantly from terrestrial environments. So most acoustic indices were developed and validated in terrestrial ecosystems and may not translate that well to underwater environments. So it's good to keep in mind. And combining acoustic indices with complementary approaches like machine learning, for example, may help to overcome some of these challenges. Next, please. So for each of these phenomena, the specification sheet then defines the ideal, desirable, and minimum resolutions that you can use and provides references for best practices. It also evaluates the uncertainty of each approach and how to actually proceed with the sampling. Next, please. The next section lists most of the observing approaches or platforms that can be used to collect ocean sound. So the most common is probably a cabled sensor, so a cabled hydrophone, but we could also have autonomous recording units, drifting systems, animal-borne tags, land-based or surface systems, ROVs, gliders, and towed platforms. So we tried to represent everything in here. Each platform has strengths depending on the target phenomenon. And so the spec sheet summarizes these methods, sensor types, recommended practices for each, and which supporting variables can be collected alongside the sound. Next, please. So the GOOS approach to data management is aligned with open data and fair practices. And so all EOV data and information is valuable, and thus effective data management practices are encouraged to ensure the data remains accessible and usable for future generations. So the Ocean Sound EOV emphasizes the need for routinely collected standardized acoustic data to support these long-term observations and predictions, as well as scientific research in general. And so we advise that all recordings must be accompanied by standardized metadata, including calibration data, and converted into SI units. Now, managing sound data present unique challenges, very large size files, varying sampling rates, differences in metadata completeness. So while the EOV strongly emphasized for the data to be discoverable and reusable, at the moment there are no metadata standards as such yet available to follow and to advise. That would be adequate. There is no metadata portal, if you want, that is adequate for ocean sound data sets. But that's something that has been identified, especially by the IQOE group, and that they are working on in the background. So I would stay tuned for further information about that. There are some international and national systems that could serve as potential nodes for to store the actual data. Like I'm thinking of AODN in Australia or ADON in the US. Next, please. And then eventually, we hope to have a system of linked data and metadata centers so that this data contributes to loads of very important systems and goals that you can see here on the right. As you would agree, shared data increase scientific impact. It enables cross-regional comparisons, supports policy, linking to climate and biodiversity frameworks. So more globally, the IQOE acoustic data portal is currently compiling metadata of ocean sound recordings. So for now, if you are recording sound in the ocean, I would encourage you to get in touch with IQOE if you would like your recordings metadata to be visible. Next, please. So as I said, there are still some challenges, different data acquisition method, different way to record the metadata, different sampling rates for different recordings, duty cycle, etc. And usually a huge amount of raw data that is difficult to store at just the one place. And sometimes there is also not a lot of expertise on how to actually analyze this data. So we hope that the EOV will help address some of these challenges by promoting a harmonized approach and building capacity across the global community. Next, please. So the way forward, I would advise to read and follow the EOV spec sheets. For more details, you can refer to the implementation plan. Use standard protocols. Many protocols are now aligned with ISO standards. Publish your data following FAIR principles and enjoy the benefits, more citations, stronger collaborations, and greater impact across climate, biodiversity, and ocean health initiatives. Next. I think that's it. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you to the GOOS BioEco community and all contributors working to advance the global coordination of the Ocean Sound EOV. And thank you all for being part of this growing effort.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucille. So Suzanne and Ante, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, thanks, Lucille. Hi, everyone. So for the fish section of this webinar, we're going to go over why monitoring is important and then provide an overview of the current essential ocean variable specification sheet, and then end off with some case studies that illustrate how local scale research efforts can feed into global data sets when they follow standardized best practices. You can go on to the next slide. So the first question is, why should we be monitoring fish? Importantly, fish don't exist in ecosystems. Their functional traits, so what they eat, how they move, how they process nutrients, etc., actively shape ecosystem health and functioning. By controlling food webs, cycling nutrients, and physically modifying habitats, fish maintain ecosystem stability and productivity, which ultimately provides the tangible benefits to human societies. The important take-home point is that protecting fish and functional diversity goes beyond just species conservation. It's about maintaining ecological processes and keeping aquatic ecosystems healthy and productive. Next, please. So fish are also facing increasing threats. These include climate change, overfishing, habitat destruction, and pollution. For example, this framework, or the framework on this slide, shows how climate change can cascade through marine systems. Direct effects of climate change include fish moving to new areas, shifts in the timing of life events like spawning, and changes in productivity and altered food web dynamics. These direct effects lead to population or ecosystem level consequences, and simultaneously, the effects of fishing and other anthropogenic stresses compound these climate impacts. All of these factors feed into ecosystem health and functioning, and ultimately affect the system's vulnerability and resilience, and its ability to deliver the ecosystem services that we depend on. This then necessitates management interventions through monitoring, adaptive management strategies, and education. So the goal of the Fish EOV is to provide the standardized monitoring framework needed to detect these changes at local and global scales and enable adaptive management, thereby building resilience in the marine ecosystems. You can change the next slide. So to effectively monitor fish populations, we need to understand the different monitoring approaches and how they complement one another. The first key distinction is between fisheries-dependent data and then fisheries-independent data. Fisheries-dependent data are the reported catches, landings, and commercial fishing records. These are managed by the Food and Agricultural Organization and regional management agencies. The fish essential ocean variables, in contrast, focus exclusively on the fisheries-independent data, being the scientific surveys conducted specifically to assess fish populations and communities at various scales without many of the biases that are inherent in fisheries-dependent data. You can change again. So within the fisheries independent research space, there's a remarkable diversity of how we study fish populations. Methods range from traditional trawl surveys and plankton tows to in situ observations using scuba or remotely operated vehicles, to modern approaches like eDNA and methods for tracking animal movements such as acoustic telemetry. Each method has distinct strengths and limitations, and many methods capture different aspects of the fish communities. This creates challenges for data interoperability, and it limits how easily we can merge data from different techniques to address larger scale questions. While it would be great if everyone followed more standard approaches, the choice of which research method to use is dependent on many factors, including research objectives, institutional resources and capacity, environmental factors, and institutional history. To accommodate this, the fish specification sheet takes an inclusive approach. So rather than prescribing set methods that would exclude valuable data, the goal is to provide general recommendations that accommodate this methodological diversity while maintaining the scientific rigor through best practice guidelines and enabling us to move from fragmented local surveys into integrated global insights. You can go on to the next slide, and then Suzanne will take over.
Thank you, Ant. Yeah, so as already mentioned by Ant, with the intention of keeping the specification sheet broad and inclusive, the Fish Abundance and Distribution EOV focuses on observed population and assemblage structure of marine fishes, including trawlers, cartilaginous, and bony fishes. The goal is to measure these groups consistently within a defined spatial unit so that we can track how fish populations change across space and time. Next, please. And what do we need to measure for this? On the left, we have the EOV subvariables. These are the primary measurements that directly describe fish populations. They include species identity, species abundance, individual lengths, to infer on population size structure, fish biomass or the total weight of individuals in a sample, and repeated individual detections, which are especially important for acoustic or tag-based monitoring. Together, these tell us who is present, when and where, in what numbers, and with what size or biomass structure. On the right, we have the supporting variables, which add context and scale to the subvariables. These include sampling information such as date, time, location, depths, sampling methods, sampling unit, and the taxonomic identification level and taxonomic scope, which describes whether all species occurring in the study region and available to the observing method were sampled or only a subset of species, which is important as it allows us to also estimate absences. All of these parameters are absolutely key as they influence how we interpret the biological measurements. We also need environmental parameters such as temperature at sampling depth and habitat characteristics within the sampling unit, and when relevant, phenomena-related parameters that capture life history events like reproduction. But what kind of ecological signals we are actually trying to detect? Next, please. In line with other BioEco EOVs, we have identified three phenomena. So species distribution patterns and trends that look at how species occurrence changes over space and time. This could include shift in range boundaries, local declines, or the arrival of new species as waters warm or habitat change. Community and population status and trends, which refer to changes in the structure of fish populations or assemblages, such as shifts in size structure or relative abundance among species. And finally, phenological changes. Phenology tells us when key life history events occur. For fishes, this includes changes in spawning timing, the abundance and distribution of ichthyoplankton, recruitment pulses, and migration or movement patterns. Next, please. So how can the EOV subvariables help us to capture these signals? For example, species identity can inform where species occur and how their distribution shifts. Species abundance and individual length are crucial for detecting changes in population structure, such as shifts in abundance or size composition. Repeated individual detections from tagging or acoustic telemetry support analysis of movement patterns and other phenological signal, as well as where species occur. So most subvariables are used to capture more than one phenomenon and are often used in combination to provide us a more complete picture of how fish populations and communities are changing. Next, please. To correctly interpret these biological measurements, we also need the supporting variables that provide context and scale to the observations and make them comparable across regions and time. Sampling observation parameters are key and need to be provided in all cases, as well as the environmental parameters, whereas phenomena-related parameters are only included in the phenological changes. Next, please. The guiding principles to monitor fish ensure that observations are scientifically robust, comparable, and useful to a wide range of stakeholders. Monitoring should be based on scientifically validated methods, using well-developed and preferably mature best practices that ensure consistency and comparability across observing platforms. Methods and data products should support a broad international community, and the sampling design must allow for robust quantitative analysis, including estimation of trends and variability. Where possible, we should aim for the highest taxonomic identification level, ideally to species, and the broadest feasible taxonomic scope, meaning that all species detectable by a chosen method are identified. This maximizes the utility of observations for multiple applications. and observations should fit within an integrated long-term observing system with contributions at all spatial scales becoming especially powerful when shared openly. Next, please. Translating these principles into practical recommendations for where and when observations should take place, we will use the ideal, desirable, and minimum levels of spatial and temporal resolution for monitoring species abundance as an example. Regardless of the level, sampling should be scientifically validated, methodologically consistent, and supported by complete metadata. Species abundance is measured as the number of individuals per species in space and time. The ideal sampling covers broad or even global spatial scales and spans all depth strata with a high sample resolution that maximizes confidence in the observed data that is collected annually to triannually at the same time of the year and sustained over multiple decades to capture long-term trends. The desirable sampling covers regional spatial scales with sufficient sample resolution for statistical inference, also collected annually to triannually at the same time of the year and sustained for at least a decade to enable detection of medium-term trends. Finally, the minimum sampling covers local spatial scales with the minimum sample resolution needed for statistical inference, collected at least at 2 time points at the same time of the year over a 2 to 5 year period to allow detection of basic directional changes. And back to Ant.
Thanks, Suzanne. You can change slide. So with this slide, we're basically going to go over, or in theory, we're going to go over the sampling approaches and platforms and technologies available. But because there are so many techniques, I thought I would just highlight again the characteristics that we are looking for within these methods. Suzanne has already kind of gone over these, so I won't go into too much detail. But what we want to do is to ensure that the data we collect are comparable and useful across the global network. So we're looking for approaches that are scientifically validated and represent mature ocean practices, or at least have that clear pathway to become mature. We are also looking for methods that are efficient, so those that provide information across multiple subvariables or even multiple EOVs simultaneously. And then weight is given to methods that are non-lethal and broadly accessible, so that monitoring isn't in conflict with the conservation or management objectives, and that the monitoring isn't limited to only the most well-resourced institutions. So this approach allows us to embrace the methodological diversity while maintaining the rigor and comparability that the global observing system requires. Thanks. We're going to move into the case studies now with Suzanne starting.
So you can change, Anna, please. Thank you. So as a first case study, Fish Globe provides an example of how regional monitoring programs can support the fish EOV. It is an international consortium that curates, standardizes, and shares long-term bottom trawl survey data from the North Atlantic and North Pacific. It includes core EOV subvariable and uses relatively consistent survey methods. A major strength is that the dataset is accessibly open access, and the coverage is currently regional and focused on demersal fishes, but there is potential for spatial expansion. And so Fish Globe shows what coordinated regional surveys can already deliver, and also illustrate how local and regional efforts can collectively contribute to a global observing system. Next, and back to Ant.
Yeah, so in the scuba-based visual sensor space, the Reef Life Survey program provides an excellent example of a coordinated citizen science at a large scale. So RLS uses proven, mature methodologies that enable both local scale research like studying critically endangered handfish near Hobart, to global scale analysis that identified the key features that work towards the success of marine protected areas. In addition, RLS has a really interactive website where indicators are displayed in a useful way to convey meaningful information, and they provide all their data open access. So it's a really great example of how citizen science can meet the EOV's criteria when built on mature methodologies with quality control. And you can change slides. Another good example is the research carried out with baited remote underwater video systems, or BRUVs. Historically, the BRUVs research community have been highly standardized around the world, even though there's a large number of institutions carrying out independent research. And because of this high level of standardization, local scale projects can easily be integrated or merged into regional and global data sets. A good example is the Australian BRUV synthesis, which was able to gather about 20,000 BRUVs deployments collected from multiple institutions. And these data are stored in the open access global archive repository, which has since been expanded to incorporate global data sets from around the world. In a similar way, the Global Finprint or the Finprint project used the standardized BRUV methodology to carry out a coordinated global survey of reef shark populations. And the data sets collected through this project have in turn been used to address local scale research questions and support the management requirements at local levels. You can change slides. So what are our next steps? We still need to finalize the specification sheets, taking into account our community inputs. There was a questionnaire that was distributed, and we received feedback from the broader community, and then we've had a series of expert workshops to try and identify how best to integrate the changes. Because of the large number of methods and the diversity of sampling methods that we have within this field, we're going to develop a method-specific EOV requirements. So this will be an addendum to the spec sheet and provide more focused information dependent on the method that you're planning on using. And then we're wanting to run the selected methods or run the available methods through the ocean practice maturity model to guide the development and the selection of methods for monitoring. And then onto this, we want to start finalizing and further developing the fair data management protocols within the global repositories and provide opportunities to get the data published within the global repositories. And then lastly, there's a focus on building capacity within the research field at global scales to try and address some of the imbalances in terms of where the research is currently being done. So the FISH EOV framework will only succeed through collaboration, where everyone's local observations, when standardized, become part of our collective global understanding. And because of this, we welcome everyone's participation in this effort. And that's I think, the end of ours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for these presentations. We are going to move to questions, but I hope that I'm not the only one. I cannot enter my question in the question and answer, so I really hope that the people online don't face the same problem. So for the moment, we don't have question and answers.
We have one.
We have one? Oh, okay,
Yes.
yeah, sorry, but I don't see it. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, thank you so much for the question. So I guess it's for the fish EOV. Regarding case study number 2, in the map you presented, I noticed a heat map style monitoring shown for East Greenland. Could you clarify what data source this is based on, and whether a specific monitoring system is currently implemented there?
Was that the Reef Life survey? I think that was the Reef Life survey. So that would have been implemented through the global volunteer-based monitoring program, which is called Reef Life Survey. They carry out scuba-based visual census surveys, and how they operate is they work with a group of volunteers, highly trained volunteers. Often they come from scientific backgrounds, and they carry out surveys within their areas of interest. So for that example, there would have probably been some researchers within Greenland that were collaborating with the RLS team, and they implemented surveys there using the Scooper-based approaches. If you go onto the website, so it's Reef Life Survey, it's a really nice website to navigate through. It will take you through where all the data are, and then you can also obviously follow up with them if you have further questions.
Okay, so if you have other questions, don't be shy, put them in the Q&A box. So yeah, there is a question. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to pronounce your name because it's kind of complicated. I'm going to do a really bad job there, but there is a question: what are the best databases of species-specific sounds? I am personally interested in the North Atlantic and Baltic, but others generally. So that's for you, Lucille, I guess.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. These data specific sound database are fairly new. It's a fairly new thing. They are numerous, but not exhaustive. So I know I specialize in fish, so I know there is one that is trying to record all the sound of fish. I know that there are a few specific ones for marine mammals as well, but they are dispatched to different areas as well. So I would encourage you to look at, for example, the website Does It, which is a good website about ocean sound, which has lists of all these databases. I am not aware of any invertebrate sounds repository just yet. Hopefully that comes soon. But there is no, I want to say, official repository for all the marine organisms yet, at least.
Okay, so I have a question, and in the meantime, if you guys have a question, please put the question in the Q&A box. But I have a question for you, Lucille. But maybe it's a trap. I don't know. Maybe it's a tricky one. Do you have any example of integration of ocean sound EOV data or a derived product from it to assess community or ecosystem health status to guide decision making at large scale?
Yeah, look, that's a very good question, Audrey. The short answer is no. There is no case study that is an ideal example. So typically, ocean acoustics is used by different communities centered on very different topics. It could be marine biology, could be national security, geophysics, and each group designs the instrument and the research program to collect observations for their own purpose, with little thoughts about multiple uses or global use generally. So I think that just illustrates some of the challenges that we face as an ocean sound community, but that's what we want to change. Hopefully, the implementation plan and the specification sheets, with the help of the GOOS system, will help. And we look forward to seeing burgeoning case studies coming up.
Okay, cool. So exciting stuff ahead. Okay, so yes, there is a question about getting the presentation document after this. I guess Anna is replying online. I have a last question for Suzanne and Ant regarding the fish EOV. I was wondering if you guys take into account already or not the potential bias linked to individual fish movement in assessing population status in terms of abundance, but also distribution at larger scales. And if yes, how? So that's a tricky one, but it's really curiosity. I'm sorry.
Well, I can try to answer it and then you jump in. And so what we think is that given that we recommend to have to observe always at the same time of the year, so that partly helps to as our movement of fish are often related to seasonal changes. This addresses this part, and in the ideal setting, the sampling is at a very high resolution, so with a lot of samples within an area, and this hopefully will address or limit the bias due to a fish movement, individual fish movement.
But just to clarify, don't you think, because I was thinking that the other day, like probably you need a different sampling to assess the distribution and the abundance. So the abundance, yes, you measure it at the fixed moment, but the distribution, if you want to cover it, then you might advise to follow it all across the year, or at least in different seasons, to make sure that you have the real distribution of the population, including all the migration.
Good question.
Sorry. Probably not the right place to have this discussion.
I still think that it's captured because it's not to have it at the seasonal resolution is probably not feasible to have it on a long-term basis, because for what we're aiming for is to detect change, which implies that we need temporal data, so that over time there are changes. So that was our thinking, that it's just not implementable.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think the key there is that as long as you have the monitoring at the same time of year, what you're comparing is the same. So if they all of a sudden start shifting their distributions in one way or another, you'll pick it up, even though you might not be getting the full extent of their distribution at the time that you're monitoring. It'll allow you to detect that change, which is the signal and phenomenon that we're interested in. And then I was just thinking that your first part of the question, Suzanne, I think got the answer spot on. But that's obviously the problem about non-lethal methods. If we were taking the fish out, then we wouldn't double count them. But we don't want to be doing that.
Okay, so I guess we are running out of time, but I really wanted to thank you all for all the three of you for this presentation. I want to thank the audience, although we don't see you, for attending. I hope you learned a lot. The specification sheets are available on the GOOS website. If you enter essential ocean variables and GOOS, you will find the page where the current version of the specification sheets are for all EOVs, including the BioEco ones. And as the speakers were mentioning, they are currently being revised, and they will be revised regularly in the coming years, when needed, to make sure that the people that want to follow this guidance are being given the latest information on the best practices. And so thank you so much for attending, and wishing you a nice end of day or evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
And I have nice comments in the Q&A about great presentation. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Very insightful. Thank you, guys.